Okay, so for lesson 11, you're going to be modeling division using equal groups and tape diagrams. I know that you've seen tape diagrams probably on Zearn, and you probably used some tape diagrams last year, but we're going to use those for quite a few lessons in this module to represent multiplying and dividing. But they're really just like equal groups. We just label them a different way. Okay, so let's take a look at our first problem. It says Rosie puts 2 lemon slices in each cup of iced tea. She uses a total of 8 slices. How many cups of iced tea does Rosie make? Okay, so you can see that I drew some equal groups on this page. So I've got one group and it has 2 in each group, and then I have a total of 4 groups. So it says, how might the equal groups help us solve 8 divided by 2? Because when you take a look at the word problem, we knew that she had a total of 8 slices, and whenever we're starting with the total, or whenever we know the total, then you automatically need to be thinking of division, because the division is always going to give us the total, and then we're going to have to divide that by how many are in each group, or how many groups we have. So when we look at the problem, it says that she put 2 lemon slices in each cup, and so it was asking how many cups of iced tea did she make. So I'm going to cover this up real fast. We didn't really know that. Okay, we didn't know that there were going to be 4 cups. We knew that one circle could represent 1 cup, and we knew that she was going to put 2 lemons in each cup. So the way that we would have to figure it out is we'd have to keep adding a cup with 2 lemons in it until we used all of our 8 lemons, and that's how we came up with 4 groups, which would tell us that she was going to use 4 cups of iced tea. Okay, so now we are going to take a look at it and figure out how we're going to draw a tape diagram that is going to relate to the equal groups. So it says the question asks how many cups of iced tea Rosie makes. Do the cups represent the number of groups or the number of lemon slices in each group? So I just went over this in the previous page, and we talked about how however many cups she had, that was going to tell us however many groups she was going to have. So it's really important for you to understand what the answer is telling us. Either the answer is telling us how many groups there are or how many are in each group. Okay, so here's a look at a tape diagram, because we're about to do one together. We knew that there was going to be 2 lemons in each cup, so you can see that I just went ahead and I just drew a rectangle, and I made 4 different sections on my tape diagram because we knew that there were going to be 4 different cups. Each section had 2 in it because that stands for 2 lemons. One thing that we do with tape diagrams, though, is that we label them. So we're always going to, at the top of the tape diagram, we're always going to label what the group represents. So this one group, along with all these others, represents 2 lemons. And then at the bottom of a tape diagram, we're always going to label what does the whole tape diagram stand for. And we label it with what we know and what we don't know. So from this problem right here, we knew that there was going to be a total of 8 slices, but what we didn't know, and that's where you get the question mark from, was how many cups Rosie was going to have. So we did not know that from the beginning, but once we worked it out, we figured out that she was going to have 4. So one thing that we're going to work on these next few lessons is drawing tape diagrams correctly and labeling them correctly so that they match the problem that we're working with. Okay, so now we're going to move on to a problem where you're going to practice drawing the tape diagram, and you're going to do this on the piece of paper that you will have in your binder. So it says, Mrs. Alvis puts 21 papers in 7 piles. How many papers are in each pile? So we have to figure out first, what is the unknown? What do we not know? So based on this problem, we're going to find what we don't know where the question is. So what we don't know is how many papers are in each pile. We do know that she has 21 papers, so they told us the total, so we know that we're dividing, and we know that they're going to be in 7 piles. So whenever you see this word 7 piles, you need to be thinking of 7 groups. So we can draw our equal groups to match this problem because we know how many groups that we're going to have. What we don't know is how many are going to be in each group. So on your piece of paper, I want you to draw 7 circles to represent the 7 piles. Once you have your 7 circles drawn, I want you to go ahead and push play. Okay, so you have 7 piles, or I'm sorry, you have 7 circles, and that's going to represent how many piles of paper that Miss Alvis is going to have. So whenever we're dividing, we either are not going to know how many groups, or we're not going to know how many in each group. So for this problem, we don't know how many pieces of paper are going to be in each pile. So what we have to do is we start putting 1 piece of paper in each circle or each pile until we've used 21 altogether. So I want you to do that with me as I'm doing it on the screen. So we're going to start with the first circle and we're going to put 1 piece of paper. So 1, move to the next circle, 2, next circle 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Go back to the beginning circle and count some more. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, go back to the next circle or the beginning circle, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So we skip counted all, or we didn't skip count, but we counted all the way to 21. And when you're looking at each one of your circles, you should see that each circle has 3 dots or whatever you drew circles inside of it. If each circle does not have 3, then you counted incorrectly somewhere, because whenever we're working with multiplication or division, you're going to have an equal amount in each group. So that's how you do equal groups whenever you're dividing. You just have to divide out 1 piece of paper for this particular problem into each group until you've done all of 21. So now we can see that each pile for Mrs. Alvis's piles, she's going to have 3 pieces of paper in each pile. So now we're going to take these equal groups and we're going to turn this into a tape diagram. Okay, so model the problem as a tape diagram. Be sure to label the diagram with known and unknown information. Use your equal groups to help. So what I did is I just put the equal groups up at the top of the screen because we're going to use that to help us. Okay, so on your piece of paper, what I want you to do is I want you to draw a rectangle. And in that rectangle, I want you to have it, or make it have 7 equal parts. So you're just going to draw lines to where there's going to be 7 equal parts, because we have 7 circles to represent 7 piles. So once you have that drawn, I want you to go ahead and push play. So push pause to get that drawn on your paper. Okay, so your rectangle should have 7 equal parts, or 7 groups. Sometimes it's hard to make them equal. Sometimes you have to erase your lines to make sure each part in your rectangle, or what we're going to call a tape diagram, is pretty equal. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to get it to where it's equal. So we know from the equal groups that we did that each section of this tape diagram is going to have 3 in it. So once again, I want you to put 3 dots into each section, just like we had in our equal groups, to show that each pile has 3 pieces of paper in it. And once we have 3 dots in each section, then we're going to be ready to label the tape diagram with what we know and what we didn't know before we solved it. Okay, so if you remember me saying with the lemon one, that what we label at the top of the tape diagram is always going to be what the group represents. And from the problem, we did not know that there were going to be 3 pieces of paper. So I know that we know that now, but we're going to have to solve it, and or we're going to have to write it as if we did not know. So we did not know how many pieces of paper were going to be in each pile. So on our tape diagram, we're always going to have a question mark somewhere, and the question mark is going to stand for what we did not know. So we did not know how many papers were going to be in each pile. So up at the top of your tape diagram, I want you to put question mark papers. Let me say that again. We did not know how many papers before we solved the problem. Now we do, but if we were labeling the tape diagram correctly, we have to put the question mark with what we did not know before we got started. And then at the bottom of the tape diagram, we always have to put the total, because the total is going to represent the whole tape diagram. And then Also down here at the bottom, we're talking about all of the groups. So we knew from the beginning that there was going to be 21 papers, and we also knew that there were going to be 7 piles. So this whole tape diagram represents 21 papers, and this whole tape diagram represents 7 different piles. So we didn't know how many were in each group before we started, but we did know how many pieces of paper, and we did know how many piles we were going to have. So make sure you have that labeled correctly on your paper. Now we're going to write a division equation or a division number sentence to represent this whole problem. Whenever we're writing a division sentence, we always start with the total. So we know that the total was 21 papers, so we're going to say 21 divided by, and you always work with the numbers that you were using in the problem. We did not know that the answer was going to be 3 until we solved it, so we knew it was going to be 21 divided by 7 different piles, and now we know that the answer was that 3 pieces of paper were in each pile, so make sure you get that division sentence written underneath your tape diagram on your paper. Okay, so now we're going to try one more problem before we're ready for the problem set to see if you can get a little bit better at drawing tape diagrams. So this one says Mrs. Alves puts 8 papers in 2 piles. How many papers are in each pile? So it's kind of like the exact same problem, it's just we're going to have different numbers. We know that there's going to be 8 pieces of paper total, and we know that she's going to have 2 piles. So that 2 piles tells us there's going to be 2 groups. So I want you to draw 2 circles on your paper to represent the 2 piles that she's going to have. And if you know that she has 8 pieces of paper total, then you need to figure out how many pieces of paper are going to be in each group if there are 8 pieces of paper total. So I want you to get your equal groups drawn for this problem, and whenever you're ready to check your equal groups to see if they are right, you can push play. Okay, so you had 2 circles. Each circle should have had 4 dots or 4 circles, whatever you drew in it, to represent how many papers that Miss Alves is going to have in each pile. Because this is doing, or this problem is pretty much saying 8 divided by 2, because we had a total of 8 and she divided those papers into 2 groups. And hopefully you knew that pretty easily because you know that 4 and 4 together make 8. So 2 groups of 4 would give us 8. So now we're going to take this same problem, we're going to turn it in and use a tape diagram. So underneath your equal groups, I want you to just draw a rectangle, and this time we're going to have 2 equal parts in our tape diagram to represent the 2 piles. And before we start with the dots this time and putting things in each section of our tape diagram, we're going to go ahead and label it based on what we know or what we don't know from the problem. So remember, when we're labeling the top, we're labeling what the group stands for. Okay, so according to the problem, we do not know how many are going to be in the group. So we don't know how many papers are going to be in each group. So we don't really know what this group stands for yet. So this is going to be where our question mark goes. We do not know how many papers. So up above that part of your tape diagram, I want you to put question mark papers because that is what we do not know yet. Now underneath the tape diagram, that's where we label the total, so we know that there are 8 papers total. Let me get it down here at the bottom. So we know that there's 8 papers total, and we also know that there's going to be 2 piles. So that's what we're going to write underneath our tape diagram. And now all we have to do is put how many papers are going to go into each pile. So let's just add some dots to our tape diagram. We knew from our equal groups that there were going to be 4 papers in each pile, so we're just going to put 4 dots in each section of the tape diagram. Okay? Now we're going to use the tape diagram like it says right here, and we're going to write a division sentence that shows the unknown, and now we know the unknown, which was how many papers were in each pile. Now we know that there are 4 papers in each pile. But remember, when we're writing a division sentence that we always start with the total, so we knew that there was going to be 8 papers total, so I want you to write 8, and then we knew that there were 2 different piles, so it's 8 divided by 2, and we know from solving it that there were 4 papers in each pile, so 8 divided by 2 gave us 4, and that solves the problem. So now we're going to be ready to move on to the problem set. So if you want to have that in front of you and ready, so we can get started on it. Okay, so the first problem on your problem set says Mrs. Prescott has 12 oranges and she puts 2 oranges in each bag. How many bags does she have? This says draw an array where each column shows a bag of oranges. We're going to not follow that direction, and instead of drawing an array, we're going to draw equal groups, because that's what we did whenever we were working on the concept development together on the piece of paper. So we are going to draw equal groups. It says she puts 2 oranges in each bag. So you have to ask yourself, do you know how many groups that Mrs. Prescott has, or do you know how many is going to go in each group? So if she puts 2 oranges in each bag, that tells us that there's going to be 2 oranges in a group, and the question is asking how many bags does she have, so we don't know how many groups she's going to have. So the way this is going to work is we're going to draw a circle, and we're going to put 2 dots in our circle, and then we're going to keep adding a circle and putting 2 dots in that circle until we have 12 dots total. So it's like we're skip counting by 2s. So we've got one circle with 2 dots. Now we're going to draw another circle, and I'm going to try to copy mine. I don't think it will let me, so I'm just going to have to draw it with you. So add another circle to your paper. Add 2 more dots, so now we have 4 dots, and we're going to keep doing this until we have 12 dots total, because that's how many oranges we're working with. So I want you to finish drawing your groups, putting 2 dots in each group until you've had 12 dots total, and once you have those groups finished, you can push play to check it. Okay, so you should have had a total of 6 circles drawn, because if you were to skip count by 2 6 times, that would have given you 12. So now we can see that she's going to have 6 different bags because we have 6 different circles drawn. So from the equal groups and from the problem, we're going to write a division equation, and part of it's already done. We know we're going to divide it by 2. If you remember what I said on the concept development and from previous lessons, whenever you're working with division, you always write the total first. So we know that she had a total of 12 oranges. So on this blank, you're going to have 12. We know that it's dividing by 2. And whenever we had 12 divided by 2, we came up with 6 groups. So we know that 12 divided by 2 is going to be equal to 6. So we're going to have it equal to 6. So now we're going to kind of do what we did on your piece of paper, where we take our equal groups and we turn that into a tape diagram. And this one, they already have it drawn ready for us. We just have to add how many go into each section of the tape diagram, and we have to label the tape diagram with what we know and what we didn't know, and that's going to be where our question mark goes with what we did not know. Okay, so what I want you to do on your part B with the tape diagram is put 2 dots into each section, and then push pause while you're doing that, and whenever you're ready to move on to labeling, I want you to go ahead and push play. Okay, so each part of the tape diagram should have 2 dots in it to represent the 2 oranges that she put in each bag. So now we're going to label the tape diagram. Remember what I said from whenever you were working on the concept development and we were writing it on a piece of paper, that the top part of the tape diagram is labeling what we know about the group. In this case, we knew that there were going to be 2 oranges in each group. So right here in this section, you're going to write 2 oranges because we knew that already from the problem. And then at the bottom, I always said that we always label it with the total. And when we're working with division, we're always going to know the total. So we knew that there were going to be, let me move this. We knew that there were going to be 12 oranges total. But what we did not know, and now we get to put our question mark, is we did not know how many bags. So we're going to put question mark bags because we did not know how many bags she was going to use until we drew our equal groups and figured out that she was going to be using 6 bags. So now we have our tape diagram labeled, we have our division sentence for it, and we drew our equal groups. So now we're ready to move on to another problem with some different numbers. Okay, so number 2 says Mrs. Prescott arranges 18 plums into 6 bags. How many plums are in each bag? Model the problem with both an array and a labeled tape diagram. Show each column as the number of plums in each bag. All right, so we're going to just not even listen to what these last 2 sentences say right now, because we're not going to model it with an array, and we are going to model it with the tape diagram. So what we have been doing is we've been drawing an equal groups and then we've been drawing a tape diagram, but I think that we're good with that now. So I think now we're just going to stick with drawing a tape diagram and not anything else. So the first thing that we do when we draw a tape diagram is we always just draw our rectangle. So just draw you a rectangle on your paper, so that way we can add however many groups we need or how many in each group, and we can label it. Okay, so let's take a look back at the problem. We know that she has 18 plums, and we know that she's going to have 6 bags. So you have to ask yourself, do we know how many groups? Are there going to be 6 groups, or is there going to be 6 in each group? So if you're looking at the word 6 bags, that pretty much tells us that we're going to have 6 groups. So in your rectangle that you drew, I want you to make that have 6 parts. And then we're going to have to figure out how many plums are going to go into each part, which represents bags. Remember, like I said, sometimes it's hard to make these parts on your tape diagram equal, so sometimes you got to erase your lines to make the sections of your tape diagram seem a little bit more equal. So I just had to move some of my lines. Okay. We're going to go ahead and label our tape diagram before we draw in it, because we know what we know and what we don't know. So once again, at the top of our tape diagram, we label what the group stands for. In this case, we do not know how many plums are going to be in each group. So that's where we're going to put our question mark, and we're going to put question mark plums because we're not sure how many are going to be in there. The bottom of our tape diagram, we always label what the total is, so we know that there's 18 plums altogether. And we also knew that there were going to be 6 bags altogether. Alright, so now we have our tape diagram labeled, and now we just have to start figuring out how many plums are going to be in each bag. So the way that we do that, like we did on a previous problem, is we just put 1 plum in each section until we've counted all the way to 18. So go ahead and put 1 dot in each section until you've counted to 18, and then push play whenever you're ready to check that. Alright, so once you put 1 dot in each section and you counted all the way to 18, you should have had 3 dots in each section, so that would stand for 3 plums in each bag. Okay, so out here to the side, we're going to kind of think of these types of problems as a math writing problem, and we're going to put our division equation that goes with this, so we know what the answer was to our division equation. So once again, when we're writing division, we always start with the total, so I want you to write 18, and based on the number that they gave us in the problem, we know that we're doing 18 divided by 6, and once we solved it using our tape diagram, we found out that 18 divided by 6 was equal to 3. And the way you have to think of it is 3 times 6 equal to 18? Because that will tell you if your answer is correct. And we do know that 3 times 6 is equal to 18. So now we are ready to move on to the next page of the problem set. Alright, so number 3 says 14 shopping baskets are stacked equally in 7 piles. How many baskets are in each pile? And then I'm going to stop reading because it's going to tell us to model with an array and a tape diagram. But we're not going to do that. Like I said, we're just going to do a tape diagram. I'm going to save you some work here. So we're going to start with the rectangle again. And then we're going to take a look back at the problem and ask ourselves, do we know how many groups or how many in each group? So we know that we have 14 shopping baskets. That's our total. But does the 7 piles stand for us having 7 groups? Or is it going to be 7 baskets in each pile? So asking yourself that, you should understand that 7 piles means that there's going to be 7 groups. So on your rectangle, I want you to have it, make it have 7 equal parts. And once you have that, I want you to push play so we can move on. Okay, so your tape diagram has 7 equal parts because there were 7 piles. And now we are ready to label the tape diagram before we start figuring out how many baskets are going to go into each pile. So once again, we got to start with the top. And the top always stands for what does the group represent? We do not know how many baskets are in each group or are in each pile because that's what the question is asking. So right here above it, we're going to put question mark baskets because we're not sure about that yet. We're going to have to solve it first. And down at the bottom, we know the total. We know that there was 14 shopping baskets. And we also know that there were 7 piles. So we got all the labels that we need on our tape diagram, and now we're ready to figure out how many baskets are going to go in each group. So we're going to start by putting 1 dot in each section until you've counted all the way to 14. So I want you to go ahead and do that on your tape diagram, and whenever you're ready to check that, you can push play. Okay, so if you put 1 dot in each section of your tape diagram until you counted to 14, you should have gotten that there were 2 in each section. So now we know that the question, or the answer to the question of how many baskets does she put in each pile, was 2 baskets. So out beside our tape diagram, we're going to write our division equation that goes with this problem. We always start with the total, so we're going to put 14, and we know based, whoa, let me fix that. We know based on the problem that we were dividing that by 7. And we know that 14 divided by 7 is equal to 2 because that's how many baskets were in each pile. Okay, now we're ready to move on to the last 2 problems. On this one, I think I'm going to let you try a lot of it on your own. So we know that we're going to be drawing a tape diagram, so let's go ahead and get our rectangle drawn. And let's take a look at the problem together before I let you try some of it on your own. It says, in the back of the store, Mr. Prescott packs 24 bell peppers equally into 8 bags. So you have to ask yourself, do the 8 bags tell us how many groups, or does the 8 bags tell us how many in each group? And if you answered yourself correctly, then the 8 bags tells us how many in each group. So on your tape diagram, you're going to need to draw 8 sections to stand for the 8 bags. And if we have 24 bell peppers total, then you know that you're going to have to stick 1 dot into each bag until you've gotten to 24. So what I want you to do on your own is to finish drawing your tape diagram, and I want you to label it. If you need help, look back at the other ones that we labeled to see if that will help you label this one on your own. And if you get stuck, you can push play and I'll walk you through it. So you try this one on your own, and when you're ready to check it, or if you get stuck, I want you to push play. Okay, so this is what I was looking for. If you had 8 sections, that's correct because we talked about there were 8 bags, so you're going to need to have 8 sections. Once you started putting 1 dot in each section and you counted all the way to 24, then you should have ended up with 3 in each section. And then the labeling part. We did not know what the groups stood for. We did not know how many peppers were going to be in each bag, so that's why you needed to put question mark peppers up at the top. Down at the bottom, we knew the total. We knew that there were going to be 24 bell peppers, and we did know that there were going to be 8 different bags that we were working with, so that's what we labeled down at the bottom. So if you need to fix anything on your problem set, you can go ahead and do that now and push play when you're ready to move on. All right, number 5 says, Olga saves $2 a week to buy a toy car. The car costs $16. How many weeks will it take her to save enough to buy the toy? So we're going to draw a tape diagram. So get us a rectangle ready. And then we're going to have to look back at the problem and ask ourselves, what do we know? How are we going to make this tape diagram correctly? So it says she saves $2 a week. So I want you to think of a week being a group. Okay, so what the question is asking us is how many weeks will it take her to save enough? So we don't know how many groups are going to be in this tape diagram. So what we're going to have to do is we're just going to have to draw one group, because that's all we know so far. We know that in 1 week, which is going to be one group, that she saves $2. So I want you to go ahead and put $2 in this first group because that's all we know so far. Okay, so let's go ahead and label our tape diagram. We already know that this stands for $2. We do not have to put a question mark right here, right now. We're going to label the top of that $2. Now we're going to label the bottom. We know that the total for all these cars is going to be $16, so we know the total amount that's going to be in this tape diagram is $16. But we do not know how many weeks it's going to take her to save that, so that's where our question mark is going to come. So question mark weeks. And now what we're going to have to do, instead of putting 1 dot into each section, because we don't know how many sections we have, we're going to have to keep adding sections of 2 until we have skip counted all the way to 16. So on your tape diagram, I want you to add another section, and I want you to put $2 in that section again. And now we have a total of $4, and then we're going to add another section. We're going to add $2 more to that. If you're skip counting by twos in your head, now you have $6. So I want you to keep adding sections on your tape diagram until all of your twos add up to 16, and then we will know how many weeks it took her to save enough to buy the toy. So push pause while you're doing that and push play when you're ready to check it. Okay, so if you kept adding a section and putting 2 in it, then you would have gotten to where you had a total of 8 different sections, because 2 times 8 or 8 times 2 is 16, and if you were skip counting, you would have went 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So now we know that the number of weeks it took her to save enough to buy the toy was 8 weeks. So the last thing that we need to do is write our division equation. So out beside it on your paper, I want you to put 16 because that's the total amount that she had to begin with. The number in the problem that we know we're dividing it by is 16 divided by 2. And whenever we drew our tape diagram, we figured out that 16 divided by 2 was equal to 8. Okay, now you're ready to move on to the exit ticket. The only thing I'm going to say about the exit ticket is it says to model it with an array and a tape diagram. I only want you to do a tape diagram. You do not have to draw an array. So once you have that done, you may bring it to me so we can check it.